How did you find out your significant other was cheating on you? I had a feeling for a while, but nothing concrete. We only had one car, so she would drop me off at work and then go on to her work. We were supposed to have lunch together when she called and said she couldn't make it, she was tied up at work. Boss heard I didn't have lunch, so he gave me the company truck to go pick up lunch for the shop. Drove to the fast food place my wife and I were supposed to have lunch at and saw her sitting outside with a coworker holding hands and feeding each other. I went through the drive-thru, then honked at them. Her face went from confusion to shock and she tried to pull her hands away from the dude. Found out he was told I was her gay roommate. Used her iPad on our honeymoon at Disney. She hadn't used it in a while, so when I powered it, all her texts from her phone synced over. Saw the whole affair flash before my eyes. Doing much better now than I was then. Back when cell phones had limited minutes, I got notified that we were over our limit. Checked the last bill and nothing but her and her boss talking at all hours of the day. Then she stupidly left her email open on my computer and I got to read how he enjoyed touching her boobs a lot. The dude she cheated on me with had no idea I even existed and I was out of town visiting my dad in Boston. He sent me a message on Facebook telling me he's sorry, but he had no idea I existed and he was drunk that night. He woke up before her and used the bathroom and saw my shaving kit. She said it was her roommate's, but it was a one-bedroom apartment. He did some snooping and found out she was dating me. Real bro move. I had no anger towards him, actually the opposite. He even invited me to have some drinks and he'd pay. I respectfully declined. Luckily, we only had 6 weeks left on our lease. The most painful and awkward 6 weeks of my life. She threw away a 3-year relationship because she didn't want to go to Boston but was mad that I still wanted to go without her. Now I'm happily married to a non-toxic and wonderful woman, and that experience taught me a lot and allowed me to dodge a bullet. My stay-at-home wife at the time got pregnant despite we hadn't had sex for a while and I had a vasectomy. She tried to hide her pregnancy under the guise of weight gain, but the medical statements in the mail gave away the purpose of her doctor visits. She tried making moves on one of my closest friends. Didn't think he would tell me for some reason. Similar thing happened to me, except I was the friend. Was over their house for drinks one night and I went to take the bus home and her boyfriend absolutely insisted on walking me to the bus stop. On the walk he kept trying to hold my hand, then while waiting for the bus he kept trying to forcefully kiss me. I told him he was a giant dick and luckily the bus came pretty quick. The next day I got her alone to let her know what had happened and comforted her as she cried. A few days after that she blocks me completely and I find out when she had talked to her boyfriend he denied it and said I had been the one trying to make out with him. She believed him and then 2 months later she walked in on him balls deep in another girl. Don't miss either of them or their drama. Found sex tape at 4 a.m. It is kind of surreal that I found it. Dog woke me up to take her outside to potty. I already had been assuming my ex-wife had been cheating but had no proof. Found a digital video camera in a travel bag one time and some lingerie in a travel bag, and she said she was planning something for me. Which was so out of character for her. Let's just say I would have been surprised to find out she was planning on filming a sex porno of us, as our sex life was dead. Plus she had been out of town several times to visit friends. There was no SD card in the digital camera though. Back to the night in question. So after our dog came back inside, I looked to my right and saw my ex-wife's purse sitting on the washer. The moonlight was perfectly centered, shining on the purse. It was the closest thing to a sign. I walked over to it and saw a zipper pocket inside the purse. Inside that was a container with an SD card. At that moment I knew exactly what I had found, but I needed to be sure. I took it out, put it in my laptop, and sure enough are like 20 different videos. Each file is titled with a date and time that coincide with her visits out of town. Sure enough, they are all videos of her having sex with someone. As a sports writer for a daily newspaper, I was assigned to cover high school football games across the region. I happened to be working a game in my hometown one Friday night. My then wife took her turn as a band booster mom working the concession stand at that same game. Because my schedule was so random, she had no clue I was there that night. Sitting in the press box keeping stats for my story, I used binoculars to better see the game. I spotted my wife in the visitor's side concession stand. Standing next to her was a local cop. When I saw them kiss, I knew. We eventually divorced. The cop divorced his wife of more than 30 years in order to marry my ex. They were married about a year, then divorced. I've remarried and will celebrate my 9th wedding anniversary in May. We were on the couch and a message popped up on his phone that was on the coffee table. I kinda glanced down and he acted very nervous, Grabbed the phone quickly and started talking about how it was just his work blah blah blah, even though I didn't even ask or say anything. I did notice that the icon in the top corner was for a known hookup app. So the next day I searched for men seeking women in our area. Found an ad that he had made, he had put his phone number in the ad, took a screenshot of it and sent it to him and said to never talk to me again. We weren't living together thankfully. He sent me a string of messages that I never replied to. The first one was him denying it completely. Then he said that I was the one cheating, because why else would I be searching on that app? Then he said he made it to catch me cheating. Then he was just insecure and wanted attention from other women, but totally wasn't going to do anything. The last message he finally admitted to it. I went and got tested and luckily hadn't caught anything. 0 out of 10 wouldn't recommend. Wasn't married, but GF of 2 years invited me to grab coffee with her on my way home from work. When I arrived at the coffee shop she was sitting with a guy. We chatted for a bit, I wrongfully assumed he was an old friend or work colleague and they had run into each other. It felt a little awkward, but I didn't have time to dwell on it at the time because I had crap to take care of at home. Apparently they were making plans to listen to records. At the time I didn't realize through context that they meant alone. We had several friends who were music nerds and who had large record collections. He would be the first of an unknown number of guys she would cheat on me within a very short period of time. I still can't get past the brazen insanity of inviting us both to meet her for coffee at the same time. There were some underlying manic/depressive and self-destructive issues, but that one still gets me. Apparently at the age of 5 or so I let it slip to my dad that my mom was cheating on him. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. My dad worked ridiculous hours as a welder while also going to school to get his bachelor's while my mom was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom but was basically the most useless person ever. She always hung out with this guy named Rich, and 4 to 5-year-old me didn't know any better, and when she told my sibling and I to let her know when Rich came over one day, obviously while dad was at work. He was gone about 16 hours at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7, and went to the bathroom to take a bath. I remarked, "Mom just wants him to see her naked." My sibling tattled and my mom asked why I said that and I said, "Isn't that what he does?" That conversation, for some reason, prompted her to give me the kid's book about sex. If she'd ignored me and not picked that time to have me read that book, she might have gotten away with it longer, but I told my dad about the book that night and why it was given to me. Then they had a fight. A few weeks later we were grocery shopping with my dad when we saw Rich in the store and my sibling and I asked if we could go see him and my dad aggressively said no and turned us the other way. Months later, my dad told us that they were separating and probably getting divorced. My sibling, who is older than me, was distraught but I was just like, yeah, I'm okay with this. Y'all fight too much so, this is good. Did never notice what happened until I was 16 and my dad and I had a fight and he told me the truth about why my mom was a garbage person because I was old enough to make my own decisions and all the pieces that I couldn't connect as a kid suddenly connected perfectly. My dad didn't deserve that. My mom and I are no contact and she's still single and garbage at relationships. She deserves to be alone, honestly. I had a gut feeling. He was in nursing school and would routinely have classmates over to study. There was a younger girl and I got a weird feeling about her. I got out of work early one day and found her in my home, where my young children were. They were on the couch not doing anything but I knew. He made up some bullshit story as to why she was there. He said the alarm at his parents' house was going off and he called her to come babysit. A few days later, I asked if he could meet up near where he was studying to just grab a quick coffee so we could catch up. He declined. A few days after that, he was home and showering. Phone went off and he never locked it. I decided to look at his phone and there was a text from his friend, Andy, who is male. At first I was like, oh, I'm just paranoid maybe. But I read the message and it definitely wasn't from his friend Andy. It was the girl from school. And the message clearly showed me he was cheating. He came downstairs and I simply said we should separate and start the process for divorce. He said okay. They are married now. I'm in a good relationship. All worked out in the end. Never ever ignore your gut instinct. I was early picking him up from work and saw the other woman dropping him off. They made out for a minute before he ran inside. He came out a few minutes later, having changed into his work shirt, and immediately started complaining about his coworkers.